Welcome to Black in Physiology sponsored panel discussion, which is hosted as part of Black in Physiology Week 2021.
The purpose of this discussion is aimed to seek advice and guidance on how to successfully navigate the early stages in academia. I am Dr. Junie Paula Warrington, a neurovascular physiologist serving as co-moderator for this session. Today, I am joined by my co-moderator, soon to be Dr. Heather Beasley.
Thank you, Dr. Warrington. Hello, I am soon to be Dr. Heather Beasley, a cancer pathophysiologist, and I am honored to serve as co-moderator of this panel discussion. Today, we are honored to have three panelists who are all chairs of physiology. Firstly, we have Dr. Patricia Molina. Dr. Patricia Molina is an integrative physiologist and is professor and chair of physiology at Louisiana State University Health Science Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. After graduating with a Bachelor of Science from Universidad del Valle, Guatemala, she obtained her medical degree from Universidad Francisco Moraguan, Guatemala.
Then, she eventually obtained her PhD in physiology from Louisiana State University Medical Center.
Some of Dr. Molina's notable achievements include mentoring many trainees at all levels, and currently she serves as principal investigator, or PI, on a training program that increases diversity in neuroscience. Being a recipient of the A. Clifford Barger Underrepresented Minority Mentorship Award from the American Physiological Society. Also, she has served as past president of the American Physiological Society. Dr. Molina has been well-funded in studying the impact of alcohol and drug abuse on acute traumatic injury and hemorrhagic shock and on the progression of HIV disease.
Our second panelist is Dr. Irving Joshua. Dr. Joshua is a cardiovascular physiologist and is professor and chair of physiology at the University of Louisville, Kentucky. After graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree from Maryland State College, he obtained a PhD in physiology from Pennsylvania State University. Some of Dr. Joshua's notable achievements include mentoring and teaching of professional and graduate students for over 45 years, functioning in a leadership position as an academic coordinator for Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, serving as principal investigator of several training program grants to increase diversity in biomedical research. Dr. Joshua's research focus is on investigating microvascular changes associated with various cardiovascular diseases.
Lastly, we'd like to introduce panelist Dr. Mary Lindsay. Dr. Mary Lindsay is a cardiovascular physiologist and is professor and chair of physiology at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska. After graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Boston University, she obtained a PhD in cardiovascular sciences from Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. Some of Dr. Lindsay's notable achievements include mentoring many trainees at all levels. She's also been the recipient of the Bodil M. Smith-Nielsen Distinguished Mentor and Scientist Award from the American Physiological Society. Currently, she serves as the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Physiology, the Heart and Circulatory Physiology Journal. Dr. Lindsay's research has been well-funded in the area of cardiac wound healing after myocardial infarction.
So welcome to our panel discussion.
All right. So, for example, a recent study published in the American Journal of Surgery in 2018 showed that Black assistant professors had the lowest 10-year promotion rates of all specialties, and that minority surgeons were also less likely to remain in academia. So that begs the question of why is this the case? So hopefully today, as we discuss on the topic, how to stay in the game, navigating early stages of academia, we hope that you will be able to get some tips about the right questions to ask, the best way to negotiate for a competitive program that will hopefully get an established success in this field. So.
Awesome. So that brings us to our first question. So I am transitioning now into a postdoc position. And so there's a lot of things that I would like to ask our amazing panel about as regards to how I can be competitive in the postdoc. So what are some things to focus on during your postdoc that would prepare one for a competitive academic faculty position? And I'll start this question with Dr. Molina.
Thank you. So I think that choosing a postdoc that will give you the training, particularly in the areas that you feel should be part of your professional future. And what I mean is if you're looking for a research intensive career, or if you're looking for a position that will entail both research and teaching, I think that it's important to make sure from the get-go that you will have opportunities to develop those skills. So for example, there are opportunities to do research in research intensive institutions, to come into a lab where your PI just wants you to focus 24/7 on research, generating data, publishing papers, putting your work out there. So one thing to think about is this mentor going to be somebody that is going to help you develop the skills necessary to write your own grants, which the mentor might say, well, you don't need the money, right? I'm well funded. But the experience of writing a proposal, the experience of putting together a grant proposal is a learning process that is critical to master as you develop. You could also fall into a category of a laboratory that doesn't provide teaching opportunities, and maybe you're vying for a position in an institution that will require you to do some teaching. So looking for opportunities to be able to develop your teaching skills, looking for opportunities that will allow you to develop your test writing skills, give you the opportunity to have oral communication skills polished, is going to be very important. So in my mind, the postdoc that you pick should prepare you for the professional stage that you are aiming for, that you're hoping for in your future.
Excellent. I will now pose the same question to Drs. Lindsay and Joshua.
I'll follow up with what Dr. Molina said. I totally agree with everything she said. The best way to be prepared for the future is to prepare for that future. And so in addition to all the skill sets that she mentioned, I think that whether you're going to stay in research or you're going to go to industry, or even if teaching is in the plans, I think that having business skills and anything you can do to obtain skills in either the business of running your lab or the business of working in industry or anything along those same lines, I think those will serve you well no matter what career you end up doing.
Okay, I would agree with both of my colleagues. One of the things I also emphasize to postdocs and also graduate students is strategic career planning. Whenever you go into, if you're a postdoc, if you're going, you're applying for a position, two things you need to be conscious of: what the expectations are of whoever's your mentor is going to be, what those expectations are, but also you need to be able to present and articulate what your expectations are out of a postdoc. And by doing that, you make it clear to the individual that you're working with what you would like out of it, but you also give them an opportunity to let you know if this is going to be something that is going to allow you to make the progress that you want as far as whatever career future that you have. So many times we have postdocs that will go in and that they will do what's being done in the laboratory and what they're asked to do, and they may be successful at that. But when they look at the career direction that they wanted to go, they really didn't get those things that they really need. And as was stated before, for research, hopefully you get some of it in graduate school, but you need to be able to write. You need to be able to articulate verbally and be able to express yourself. You need to be able to have some exposure to grant writing, regardless of whether you're going to write them or not. But most in my department, most graduate students have to write a predoctoral grant as a part of their program, even though it's not required for them to have funding, external funding. That is something, and also as a requirement of a publication that they've written as a first author of completing their PhD. But you need to have goals, because most of us know if you don't have several publications where you're a primary author, you're not even going to get a really good postdoctoral fellowship, because most people want individuals that are coming in, and even though you're in a learning environment, that they're going to be able to contribute to whatever the group is that they'll be working with.
These are great points. And let's suppose this postdoc decides that I want an academic career, and this is what I strive to be, an assistant professor position. So from my experience, a lot of the early career investigators, sometimes even at the postdoc level, are expected to establish some form of independence from their postdoc mentors. What would you say is the most important at this stage of their career? Establishing independence or building collaborations? And would you say that there is a nice balance to getting these two, collaborations versus independence, met? That question, Dr. Lindsay?
Sure. I think that, like you said, it has to be a balance. If you're too independent, then you're not going to be seen as a team player. If you're too collaborative, you're not going to be seen as independent. I also think for junior investigators going out for their first grants, I think that no matter what you do, you're probably going to get some criticisms. And so I guess some advice for you is not to over worry about predicting criticisms and just go for it, and then, respond to criticisms as they come up. In terms of independence, I think a 2-to-1 rule of thumb is probably a good index. In terms of number of publications, if you're middle author on, one paper for every 2 papers that you're first or senior author on, same as you start to apply for grants, if you think of a 2-to-1 ratio, I think that that's a good balance to show that both, that you are an independent investigator with their own thoughts. And that's what independent really means, is that you have your own ideas, not that you have your own space or your own centrifuge or, anything like that. It's more of the thought processes that are, going on in your head. I think if you do that, then you'll also, have that collaborative nature and be seen as a team player. And so that's what I recommend.
Great, thank you. Dr. Joshua, do you have anything to add? And probably you could also talk about investigators who choose to stay at their own institution where they trained. Is there any different advice for these group of investigators?
Well, answering the second question first, when I started in research, it was almost imperative that you wherever you trained, you had to go somewhere else to demonstrate independence. It's not really so much the case anymore. One of the things that's happened, and it's really the lines are getting blurred between collaboration and independence, whether one excludes the other. because much of the research that's being done now requires collaboration. To get funding, it's almost impossible for someone that is in one discipline really to have a really strong application for funding. And you have multidisciplinary research is really kind of, and large group research is really something that is now is coming to the forefront and is being supported extramurally. From the standpoint of an individual, I look at independence as not so much as you have to be first author or primary author on all the papers, but if you're going to be an author, a primary author on publications, try to get those in a certain area within a journal. If you're working in a group, a diabetes group, then you want to be in a specific area. Maybe it's obesity and diabetes, that the publications that you're primary author on are theirs, even though you may have on all of those, you may have 4 or 5 or 10 different individuals that are in the authorship line. And even though it may be viewed as you're in a center where there are several people that are thought to be primarily the movers and shakers in that particular area, you can develop your area of expertise by the research area that you work in. The other thing is those publications are generally the ones that are looked at when you're looking at getting funding, extramural funding. And individuals will look at that. And in fact, being in a collaborative arrangement really is a positive, as long as they can see that you have some independence within that collaborative nature. And so collaboration and independence, used to be, when I came up, they didn't want you to just to be the head author. They want you to be author on a single paper. It's almost impossible to be a single author anymore. And so things are changing. Independence still becomes an issue, but not nearly so as being productive, and productivity is looked upon.
Thank you. Dr. Molina, is there anything else you would like to add?
I think they did a very good job in covering the really important concept of collaborating and being a team player. I think Dr. Lindsay really struck a chord there. You have to remember that nowadays, most of the science, most of the research that we're doing is done by teams. And so being able to communicate, being able to share, being able to, reach across the table and forge those collaborations is critical. The days where one investigator knew how to do everything to get a project done, those days are gone. That's not current science. And I think Dr. Joshua also pointed out the importance of identifying a niche that can be yours. So yeah, you've been co-author on multiple different papers, but still people should be able to look at your CV and pull out and say, this is what this person's area of expertise is. And I think, from what they both answered, to me, those would be the 2 most important take-home messages. Completely agree with them.
Excellent. So this kind of leads right into our next question. So I am starting a postdoc actually this month at Vanderbilt University, which is a research intensive institution. And I know, Dr. Molina, you did your postdoc there as well. So this will be kind of an interesting question. So as we consider actually starting a postdoc and then transitioning into faculty, my question is, how should we think about these startup packages for beginning faculty? We know that they can make or break one's career. And as a mother to a toddler, I have to think about childcare, insurance, and vacation or even staffing. Who do I hire first, the postdoc or, the research assistant? So my question for you all, and I will start with Dr. Joshua, is what are the most common elements of a competitive startup package? And secondly, should we consider the whole package, including all of the things such as insurance, childcare, and staffing?
Well, I think most of us that are on the panel have had to deal with startup packages and recruiting individuals, and it is very, very competitive. One of the big things is actually the total amount of the package, and I've told individuals right now. Actually, I'm in the process of us putting together a first grant at the University of Louisville, and we really feel that if you're not in the $800 to $1 million startup package in general for basic science faculty, that you're not going to be very competitive. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's all dollars up front. That can be in-kind types of elements. But you need to look at, one, what you need to be successful. Anyone that is going into a faculty position, especially a tenure track faculty position, you have about 5 years. And so you need to be productive in that 5 years. You cannot let a lack of resources be the reason that you're not productive. And so you need to start off correctly. And so you need to have a package that allows you to set up your laboratory, allows you to have enough personnel that you can be productive, because even and with most institutions, you come in with some type of national grant, but even with that, there's a renewal process coming up. And so you need to be productive during that period of time. And so if there aren't core facilities that are going to provide the support that you need to make sure that you have the what is necessary for you to be set up, for you to run and be productive in your package. At the same time, as you were saying, many of us are going to, and we have families that are moving with us. And so we want to do things that will impact immediately our families and long term. And so you need to look at the retirement package, because they vary between individual institutions. You need to look at the healthcare packages, because they vary between institutions. And most of the times they're kind of cut in stone in that those are commitments that the university at large has to make. And so depending upon what commitment the university has made, that will determine what the size of those are. Other less more intangible types of things are, if someone really wants you, knows that you have a family, knows that you might have a spouse that needs to have a position or a job either at the university or in the community, they can get individuals that, when you're interviewing, can provide you support for as far as whether it be formal or informal, as far as housing, as far as childcare, as far as looking at your spouse or significant other and looking at potential work opportunities for those. Those individuals that add those, what we might call frills, but add those on, those are the individuals, or those are the institutions that I say you want to pay special attention to, because they know that there's a totality in the startup package that doesn't just involve the dollars, but you want someone to come and feel comfortable and wanted in the environment that they come into, especially those that are underrepresented minorities, because many larger institutions, they really don't have the environment that favors individuals coming and staying there, because they lack some of those additional ones other than just the basic hard dollar startup packages.
Excellent. And so I will actually pose the same question to Dr. Molina. I know that there's a wonderful story about you and how you, after you had your son, just kind of transitioning, thinking about childcare and still career. So the same question to you, when you consider things such as childcare and insurance, what do you think are the components that make up a successful startup package that's competitive?
So there are two answers to that question. One answer is obviously a startup should take into account health insurance, should take into account the situation of the individual coming in, childcare, and support for recruitment of a spouse if it's a joint recruitment. But I think Dr. Joshua said something that is important to keep in mind. And many of these startup packages are set by the institution. And many times you will find, at least in our case, many times you will find that there's not that much negotiation leeway for different individuals as they come in. However, having said that, there are institutions that do think of the whole component. They do think of making sure that people have access to childcare funds or dollars. There are institutions that have access to local childcare. For example, Vanderbilt has a daycare, that you can get a special fare by using it. Not all institutions do. So, of course, aim high, but recognize that many times startup packages are pretty much set by the institution. I don't know if Dr. Lindsay agrees with that, or whether her institution gives her significant leeway in what she can offer. But in my place, the ultimate word is from the dean. So I can hope for the stars, but I'm not, the ultimate decision is not by the hiring chair, it's by the dean.
I would say that's correct. I think that most institutions have a range of startup, package availability and what that all includes. One thing I do want to add to this conversation is a discussion about expectations and hard and soft money of your salary. Because that greatly varies. All three of us are chairs of physiology departments, and so we're basic science. Which means that we all have tenure track positions that have hard dollar salary components to them. Whereas if you're applying for a clinical department where 100% of your salary is going to be on soft money, then I think a strong consideration for you, perhaps even more than the startup package, is what is the expectations of the institution for how much salary support you bring back on your grants, and what time range do you have to get there. And so a lot of junior faculty, postdocs going into faculty positions, a lot of the trainees get caught up in paying attention to the immediate future and don't think about the future after that. And so just having, conversations with the, recruiting chair in terms of, what percent recovery on grants is expected for me in, the first 3 to 5 years. And then after that, after 5 years, what's the expectation? I think that there's a big range of variability across institutions on what expectations are. And so just being clear up front really saves a lot of angst down the road if you didn't understand what you were getting into. And so I'll just add that component is to pay attention to, what part of your salary is going to be on a hard and a soft dollar salary component.
And if I might follow up on that, for anyone that is accepting a position at an institution, pay attention to, all right, whether it's hard dollars or soft dollars, but also pay attention to what is your base salary and what is supplemental salary. Base salary at our institution, most institutions, is a guaranteed salary once you reach tenure. All right, but the supplemental is not guaranteed. And so if you have a base salary that is 2/3 of your salary, that's guaranteed by the university in basic science departments and in clinical departments, if it are either by clinical dollars or by hard dollars. But the supplemental salary is not guaranteed. That is expectations that you would generate that. And if you don't generate that, then the university has the right to say that your salary, even though you will still be full-time and you're tenured, your salary would be cut, the supplemental, unless you were able to bring those dollars in. So you need to have a little bit of financial understanding and savvy when you go into the institutions. You just can't go in and look at what you see on the surface as what your full salary is. You need to understand how it is generated and how it perpetuates throughout your career at the institution.
So y'all have each brought up some really great points, some of which, we never really considered. So for example, just thinking about the going up front and discussing beyond the 5 years or beyond in the 3 years, exactly what the expectations are. That's something that a lot of us may not be aware that we have to do. So I really do appreciate getting that point from you. Now, you started off, Dr. Joshua, by giving a dollar amount of $800,000 to $1 million. And that sounds like quite a bit for a lot of people. But what I kind of want to ask about is, we know that people set up the startup packages quite differently, in that salaries may be included in that $1 million package as opposed to not being included in there. So in your estimation, that dollar amount that you gave, did that include or exclude the salary? And again, just what are your thoughts on advising us on being clear about what exactly is in that startup package and that dollar amount that we will be given at the negotiation table?
Normally, now I say that's generally the range, but you have to justify your startup. And so when you need to look at what you need to start a laboratory from scratch. And so a lot of that is going to be equipment. A lot of that's going to be chemicals. A lot of that may be monies that are needed for services, because as I said before, there are a number of centers that will provide services to you, but it costs at the institution. You need to look at, since you are going to be hopefully taking several years to get established, what kind of monies you might need to support not only those supplies, but if you need a technical person, and if you need a postdoctoral fellow, you're talking about individuals. We're talking about 50,000 plus per year for each of those individuals. Plus, you're going to have the benefits. So you're probably close to $75,000 for those individuals. And you're talking about, when we're talking about the monies, most of the times you're not talking about getting all those monies in the first year. You're talking about over several years are what you need. Those are supposed to be used to allow you to get the momentum so that when those monies run out, you'll be able to continue and perpetuate your laboratory and be productive. Again, though, just going in and say, well, I expect to get this $1 million. As I said before, there's no chairman that can go to the dean and say they want $1 million, and we don't have any kind of justification for it. It's not going to happen. Not in this world. That's not going to happen. So that means you need to understand what's necessary to establish the laboratory that you're going to need to be productive. Hopefully you're getting something of that from the laboratory that you're in. Hopefully you're doing some investigation. Hopefully you are talking also with the chairman of what facilities are available, and if they are ones that are going to be sufficient to make you productive. Because I'll tell you one thing, you do not enter into a position after you've negotiated everything and then come back in a month or two and said, I need something else. That one is not going to work. Trust me, it will not work. You need to be, and this means you need some requirements on whoever is applying for the position, that you do some homework, you get some assistance from individuals so that you have a startup package that is indeed one that will allow you during those first years to be productive. So you'll get that momentum that you'll be able to continue and be a productive and strong faculty member.
And I can just add a little bit to that. Again, it's going to vary across which institution that you're talking with. I know some places where they include the faculty salary in that number of the total startup. In Omaha, in our university, University of Nebraska Medical Center, our offer letter has your salary as Part A separate, and then Part B is the startup funds for research project development. And so we make it clear that that amount, we're not going to subtract your salary from it. But again, those letters of offer, you just really got to read. And if there's any hidden asterisks, anything like that, you have to pay attention. And, when I was starting out, I sent my letter of offer to chairs at universities outside of the university I was negotiating with. And they came back and said, they're not really making it super clear what your space is going to be. You probably want to ask for some room numbers. And they said this other amount is a good amount as long as it doesn't include something, make sure it's not, the expectation is not that it's also going to include this. And so, like we feel like we have to go it alone and we have to do this alone. You guys have a whole world out there of folks, ready to help you. And so don't, get peer mentoring going, get, some senior mentors who are at other institutions, people who don't have any say in the matter. Those are probably the best because they're not tainted in any way. So as far as the startup packages, like Dr. Warrington, you can't assume that they're not going to take out faculty salary. If that's not clear, you got to ask that question.
Agreed. Thank you so much. These are all great points to consider. I appreciate that. So you, Dr. Joshua, talked a little bit about the base salary versus the supplemental salary. So let's assume that, I'm not assuming, we're in this position, we have our assistant professor position, we've been productive, we've brought in some grant dollars. How do we come to you to negotiate a salary increase? And is there a particular expectation or a magic number or percent that we should be asking for?
Okay, I just had 2 faculty members. We're just looking at a salary increase for them, and generally you can have those that are off-cycle salary increases, and you can have the salary increases that occur at the beginning or at the beginning of the next academic year. So it's a little bit of difference in that as far as being able to get funds. So how do you negotiate those? One, we need to be able to show if it's a faculty member, whether that faculty member is a research faculty member or a teaching faculty member, that they are productive and that they are productive and contributing both to the university and contributing to the department and our school. So you have to have a faculty member that has credentials that we can use when we're talking about that. You also need to look at, you can look at the AAMC. I'm in the American Physiological Society. You can look at what's listed there. They list the average salaries of faculty and assistant instructor, associate and full professors. They list those. And you can use that and the AAMC list it in percentiles, 25th to 50th and 75%. We use those to say that we're looking at peers at other institutions and we're looking at what they are being compensated, and that the individual that we are bringing up is an individual that is at or above the level, however their salary is not comparable. The other thing that is also helpful is, if indeed when we're doing this negotiation, you have another offer in hand, makes it a lot easier for us as chairs to negotiate, because we say, well, this is a key faculty member and that they're being offered, and even if they're being offered more than we're requesting, we can make the case that for them to move, versus staying, we can offer them this, and I feel pretty sure that they would stay here versus possibly moving to an area where the cost of living is higher, but even the process of moving, the cost of that. And so we use whatever justification, but that one is a one that deans kind of respond to the strongest, is when you have a potential offer in hand. Also, though, if indeed we can show that there is an inequity, especially if we're underrepresented minorities, if there's an inequity in salaries for that individual, then we can generally make a strong case for a salaries increases.
Thank you. Dr. Molina, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
No, I think it's pretty well covered. I think that the only thing that did not go mentioned is obviously with promotion. there's a salary increase that comes along with promotion. And then I would also say that most of the time, it is very well spelled out in your letter of offer what the expectation is in terms of the percentage of your salary that you must bring in from extramural dollars. So when you asked the question, you mentioned it in passing. So say that all of a sudden you're being incredibly successful at getting grant funding and you've actually exceeded, what was in the letter of offer. You've exceeded the percentage that you're anticipated or requested to cover. So that's a good argument, right? I mean, you're bringing in more dollars than the chair already had put aside or budgeted for your support. So that would also be a good opportunity. But I think that it's always a good idea to be mindful, to really understand. Dr. Josh also mentioned it. Where are you being paid in terms of what is the average for your area? What is the average for your current position? Because they're going to look at that, right? I mean, they're going to look at that. You can bring in a lot of money, but if you're already really, really, in the cusp of your salary range, it's going to be much tougher for them to budge and give that approval for that raise.
Oh, and let me just follow up on but I touched on it. I think we touched on it a little bit. If indeed you do have a base salary and you have a supplemental salary, and you're a faculty member, and it turns out that you had that grant didn't get funded that you thought was going to get funded. All right, but and so now instead of generating 30% of your salary as you thought you were for your supplement, you're only generating 20, all right, or 15. Most institutions, all right, have funds that are bridge funds that you would not see a automatic drop in your salary. It would take a year or two before you would see that happen. So most institutions have kind of built that in. But again, you need to be cognizant of that. That's not they're not required to do that, but clearly they would like to have a productive faculty member. And if they just had a period of time where a down period where things didn't go well, they want to make sure that individual has the opportunity to regain those funds, those extramural funds.
Thank you. Dr. Lindsay?
I'm just going to add something briefly that Dr. Joshua touched on and just emphasize that. Know when the fiscal year of your university is. It's much easier to build in a raise into a budget that is being generated than to try to find money after the budget's been generated. And so July 1 is our fiscal year start date. February, March is when we're doing our annual evaluations for our faculty. And that's also the same time we're creating our budgets for the next fiscal year. And so the optimum time to ask for a raise or a salary increase is during that annual evaluation, because there you're plugging in everything that you've done in the last year. Like Dr. Molina said, you were expecting me to have this percent coverage. I have this other, extra percent coverage. Let's have that discussion then. It's much easier to add in than to try to find money later.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Beasley?
Awesome. So as we think about all of these faculty positions and the opportunities for promotion, I'm curious what you all think about this tenure track versus non-tenure track. It's become a lot of eyes raised about this question lately. So my question is, what do you have an opinion on tenure track versus non-tenure track? And let's start this question with Dr. Lindsay.
I was hoping you would start with me. So this whole, should you be tenure track, should you not be tenure track? I 100% guarantee you someone who's tenured is telling you that it doesn't matter. And so I remember back when I was assistant professor and starting out, I I had to fight to get on tenure track. And I remember, the chair of the department at the time was like, oh, tenure's hard. You have to do all this extra stuff and, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I knew I was going to be great. And so I knew I was going to be doing all this extra stuff anyway. And I said, waking up in the morning is sometimes hard, but we all do it. So as far as tenure track, non-tenure track, anytime you can get tenure track, you should go for it. I think, and then I'll also add, once you get tenured, it no longer matters to you. Guaranteed, once you're tenured, then you don't really care. But we shouldn't be asking those who don't have it, or we shouldn't be telling those who don't have it that it doesn't matter, because I don't think that's a fair thing to be saying.
Absolutely. I'll go next to Dr. Molina.
So having said that, I think it's also important to note that tenure means different things in different institutions. And it can range from a very traditional interpretation of tenure. So for example, at LSU, if you're tenured, you can have 0 grant dollars and your salary is still going to be the same. Sure, you're not going to get your research incentive compensation, which is over and above your salary, but your salary will not be touched. That's not true in every institution. There are institutions that if you lose your funding, even if you're tenured, they will slowly start reducing your salary. In addition, there are institutions that have rolling tenure, means that you undergo review, every 5 years, every 10 years, and your tenure is reevaluated at that point. So there's a range, there's a very, very wide range of subtle differences in what tenure means in one place versus another place. And I agree with what Dr. Lindsay said. If you can get tenure, you definitely want to go for tenure.
And lastly, Dr. Joshua, I'd like to hear your input.
Yeah, I would agree with both, but kind of think about it this way. Tenure at most institutions generally means that if you're productive, then you'll have a job. Not necessarily so with someone that's on a term track, because even though you might be productive, the source of funds for that is in most cases is not what we call hard dollars, it's soft dollars. And if at our institution, which is a state institution, if state funds are cut, the first to go are the non-tenured. It turns out that if you have tenure, you're the last person. You would be the last who would lose their job if you're at an institution and you had a shortfall of money there. So there is some security that is associated with tenure. We do have to go through a 5-year periodic career review, so it is not something that, but the security that you have there, that of knowing that under most circumstances, if you're productive, then you have a guaranteed position, is something that is of importance that many that are in term positions don't have, because you can have an individual that's productive. We've had individuals that have been productive, but they were in a center and that they were term track and that they decided to close the center. And so their jobs went away. The tenured faculty really don't have to deal with those things. So there is value to tenure. Whether it's going to continue or not, it's still continuing. Some places are trying to do away with it, but it's the same thing with Social Security. They said many times we wouldn't have Social Security, but I'm still drawing Social Security. So until they get rid of it, I'm going to take my Social Security. And so it's the same thing here. I think that the other thing is it is a recruitment tool that individuals like to be able to come and have some security, whether it's more at some institutions versus other. It is some security that's associated with your position that you do have tenure.
Great. Thank you again. So my follow-up question kind of goes along the lines of tenure, since we're talking about tenure positions. We all start off knowing that we will hopefully be promoted and receive tenure if we were in a tenure track position. At what point do you think a faculty member need to start thinking about and planning and preparing for promotion and tenure? Is it something that you just always work towards, or does your department employ a pre-tenure or promotion review? What are your thoughts on being well equipped for promotion and tenure? Dr. Molina.
So I think that you need to start thinking about promotion and tenure on day one when you set foot in the institution. In fact, the moment that you are meeting with the chair, that the position is being offered to you, that is when you start thinking, what is it that I'm going to have to do to get promoted and to get tenured? Two things go along with that. Number one is you should be familiar with what are the criteria for your institution to be promoted and to get tenure. And you should keep that almost as your little day-to-day guide, making sure that you're trying as much as possible to check off all the boxes of the things that you should be doing. In our department, we actually have a mentoring approach. So we have a professional development committee that meets with faculty besides the meeting that I have on a yearly basis, and looks at what that person is doing. What are the papers that they're publishing? What's their teaching load? What students are coming through the lab? What talks they're giving at meetings? So we make it so that the entire department is vested in making sure that you stay on track. For the most part, it works. Every now and then we've had situations where the person chooses to ignore or to downplay the role of the faculty, which is a catch-22, because it's the faculty in the department, the ones that are going to vote for you to go up for promotion and tenure. So I, as a chair, might think that you're fantastic, but you also need all your peers to think that you're fantastic to go up for promotion and tenure. So it is never too early to start thinking about that.
Great. Okay, how about Dr. Lindsay?
Nothing to add. That was a brilliant answer.
Great. Dr. Joshua, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm gonna to just add a little bit, because this is an issue that, especially for underrepresented minorities, this is a problem area, in that in many institutions, and there is a dearth of underrepresented minorities in faculty positions. And so the tendency is to take those individuals and use those individuals in service activities, and as far as representatives of the institution to promote one diversity, and they get a lot of accolades for that, for doing those types of things. But when it comes down to tenure and promotion, like in our department, is primarily research productivity, teaching. Service means, and I say it means nothing, but service means very little. We have a lot of times, and I've had to counsel a number of faculty members, not in my department, and some not even at the Health Science Center, that they need to focus on what the document says are the requirements for tenure and promotion, not what somebody tells you, even if it's the chairman that tells you, unless it's consistent, because it turns out that the department faculty, and then you're also reviewed by, in our particular case, the School of Medicine. We have a tenure promotion committee. They don't look at those things that everybody said you did a great job on. They look at what the requirements are and whether you've met those or not. And this has caused a lot of problems for individuals really thinking that they're making progress because of what someone has told them versus what is written as the requirements for tenure and promotion. As Dr. Molina says, we have in our department, we have a faculty are reviewed every year, and then there's a 3-year mid-tenure review that it's made very clear to them what the requirements are and where they are as they move along those. And I have had many times where I have council faculty members, especially underrepresented faculty members, do not take that service position. That will not do anything towards improving your chances for tenure and promotion. After you get tenure and after you get promotion, if you want to do those, you can go to a variable career, and that's variable career emphasis, and you can do those things. But here, there are key things that are necessary for you to be at our institution after that tenure and promotion evaluation. You put the priority on those things, and I think it's a part of the chairman's duty to shield faculty from being caught up in those things that feel good but really don't, are really not things that are going to be productive as far as tenure and promotion.
That's
It's
excellent.
very refreshing to hear that, these are things that you all are thinking about, because I will tell you that at almost every institution, you are correct, that we are being called upon to do tons and tons of service. And so I do appreciate that advice. Thank you.
And in that same light and spirit of service, our last question that we'd like to pose to the panel kind of remembers this homecoming theme of Black in Physiology Week. So I'm grateful to last year have received the first Black in Physiology Award, where I kind of was able to kind of foster this future of Black physiologists. And so the last question, all 3 of our panelists have amazing track records of training minority students. And so my question to all of the panelists is, what is your approach to supporting minority trainees and the next generation of physiologists to make sure that they are ensuring their success? So what is it that you've done that has made it so that they've all been so successful? I guess I can start from my left, which would be Dr. Joshua, and then we'll go to Dr. Molina.
I don't know how much I have done. I do some things that I do not just for minority students and faculty, but for everyone. Now, when I was coming up, it was not so, but now everyone needs a strategic plan. And that's even more so now than ever before for individuals that are graduate students, that are postdocs, that are junior faculty. You need to have a plan on what you're going to do, because there's so many times that we have individuals that don't know they're not making successful progress until they face failure. And they should have known ahead of time. And so I instill that. I actually teach several lectures on strategic career planning, and so I think that is something that I have really instilled in all of the students, in particular underrepresented minority students. If you're looking for a career, whether it be in academia, industry, wherever, you need to have a mentor or mentors. All right, and so it's good to have mentors that are in your particular discipline. I've worked with individuals, whether if they're underrepresented minorities, if they're women. If I don't have a mentor that's in my discipline, then I'll get someone from somewhere else in the university. You need to have mentors. All right. You need to have someone that can look at it at your situation a little bit different from me because they're a little more detached to look at it. And you can, so I think one of the biggest problems that we have for underrepresented minorities is a lack of mentors, especially since the tendency is for anyone would like to have a mentor that looks like them, whether it be an underrepresented minority or whether it be a female. You need to have mentors that you can relate to. I had several female faculty members, and my wife would tell you I'm not good at relating to that well to women, and so and so no, but I have individuals that can talk because I can't look at it. It's not that I'm not receptive, but I can't look at it from that particular perspective. I think that more individuals need to pursue seeking out mentors that can look at it from their perspective. There's a lot of things we don't have time to talk about, but it used to be in academia, those individuals that got mentored were individuals that after work they go out and play golf. Now, how many underrepresented minority used to go out and play golf? I play golf not really that well. There are so many. Or go out and have a drink. How many females are going to go out with a predominantly male faculty group and have a drink and talk about things that are happening and so on? And so it is a situation that we need to look at and be active in addressing these issues, because one of the reasons we don't have as many underrepresented minorities in the science disciplines is because there's no one that is going to take the initiative to be a mentor to them. Many people will be a mentor if someone will come and ask you, but no one will go and say, I need to help you out with something like that. And so I think that's what, and I know these other two panel members is that they have the attitude if somebody needs mentoring, they won't wait for them to go. They'll go and ask them. But there are a lot of places where that doesn't happen. And so they're left to their own means, and then you end up with situations where they become discouraged, and either they don't perform well or they decide that this is not really the discipline that they want to be in. And so I say that's something that as far as developing more minority physiologists is a mentoring. We need to have a mentoring approach at the institutions. If it's something that the American Physiological Society can do to foster that, wherever we need to do that, to have more mentoring so individuals feel comfortable and that they can be successful, and they have individuals that they can turn to and feel that they're going to get good advice for that.
That was an excellent point. So I will go next to Dr. Molina. Same question. Can you provide some of the tips that you have used that have made for successful minority physiologists?
So I echo everything regarding mentors. Obviously, more is many times better. However, I also feel that one of the most important things that I have tried to do, particularly with individuals from underrepresented groups, is to make sure that they learn how to believe in themselves. The number one handicap, in my mind, of individuals from underrepresented groups that I have worked with, and perhaps me included, is that lack of confidence, that lack of certainty that we have what it takes, and that it's not an easy job. It is not an easy path. but that we have what it takes to go ahead and move on and succeed. And I think that if we could tap into individuals' confidence, if we could learn and master how to teach somebody that's coming through the door how to just believe in themselves, believe in the effort that they're putting forth, I have a feeling that there are a lot of people we would not lose along the pipelines. And maybe I'm biased, maybe that has just, maybe that opinion is informed by my experiences, but I think that you can have the best mentor in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself and in your capabilities, 10 mentors are not going to make it for you.
That's powerful. You raise excellent questions. It kind of begs the question of this imposter syndrome that happens amongst minorities. And so I will pose this last question, same question back to you, Dr. Lindsay. What are your tips? We've talked a lot about having amazing mentors that look like you or that might identify like you. And also we've talked about how to instill confidence into minority trainees. So the last question is, what additional tips have you done? Because all of your mentees have been successful.
I'll say that whenever I have someone approach me, whether they're a graduate student or a postdoc or junior faculty or even mid-career faculty, anyone who has approached me to help them, mentor them, support them, anyone who does that, the first question I ask them is to tell me what your goals are, because I can't help you unless I understand what it is you want. And usually for the grad students and the postdocs and sometimes junior faculty, they haven't taken the time to sit down and be brutally honest with themselves about what it is that they want, which makes it hard to help them get there. And so like Dr. Joshua said, having that strategic plan, all grad students nowadays have to do IAPs and IDPs or whatever plan the acronym is of the week. And I think it's super valuable, because if you take the time to think about where you want to go, that's the first step to getting there. And so I found out early in my career that the best way for me to help folks is to know where they want to go. And so once we do that, then we just get a map for how to do that. Some days I'm a mentor, some days I'm a coach, asking a bunch of questions to try to get you to self-reflect and think about what it is that if you're having trouble getting to the next step, is it a psychological issue, that you need to resolve about, just getting something done? Or is there, something technical that we need to work on, or something of that extent? And a lot of times I'm a sponsor. Once I know that your niche is, you want to be, this, known as a cardiac researcher. Okay. Then I know where to introduce you to. I know where to give you opportunities. One of the biggest joys for me, and one of the easiest ways I have to say no for lots of things that I get asked to, is I have a whole list of junior folks who need that experience. And I don't need, at my age, I don't need to add to my CV. I need to help others add to their CVs. And so, that's kind of the approach I'm taking is once I know, and once you're on my radar, then I'm always aware and trying to, plug people into the places where they're going to, get experience that's going to help them to succeed.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on it. One of the things I wanted to kind of emphasize too is those individuals that are whether they be graduate students, postdocs, or junior faculty, underrepresented minorities. NIH has the supplements, and guess what? We've applied for dozens of supplements. We have never not gotten a minority supplement. And guess what, though? That is an incentive not only for the student or the trainee or the junior faculty member to write a grant and submit it, but it's also one that facilitates collaboration between their mentor and that individual. And to have that type of success, as Dr. Molina was saying, to have that, to say that before I finished my PhD, I've written a grant, even though it's a supplement grant that was funded, or I've got a supplement grant, as a postdoc. Or I have, as a junior faculty member, I have a supplement grant that takes care of me while I'm in a term track position and helps facilitate me moving into a tenure track position. Those build up confidence. It also builds up interaction and collaboration with underrepresented minority. And then just to finally, I want to put in a plug for my wife, again, following along the lines of what Dr. Molina said. We had, a few decades back, we had only about 3 African-American students that would matriculate in our medical school. And then my wife took over. And one of the things she instituted, because it turns out that they just didn't feel comfortable in our school. And so what she did is she started a pre-matriculation program where before the start of medical school, they came in. Guess what? They came in, they knew all the teachers. All right. They knew where everything was. All right. And so now you got 100 and some other students that come in. All right. And instead of them looking around to find out who can help me, they're pursuing them. All right. And so now we're 10 times as many underrepresented minority, simply because now they have the confidence. I can do it, and people are coming to me, and I'm providing the answers, and saying that, it's like the tables have kind of been turned, but that builds confidence. And so we have to do those things that build confidence in individuals if they're going to be successful. Even though they may have the tools, we have to say you can use them. And that other people, because one thing about medical students, if you got something that they want, they don't care whether you're black, you're yellow, you're green, or whatever, they're going to come and pursue you to get those to be. And so that's another thing that we try to do, is try to build up that confidence in underrepresented minorities, that they can be successful, and don't have to be followers, but they can be leaders in these areas.
Excellent. I loved all of those tips. That was just so informative for me as a postdoc, and then also Dr. Warrington as she's junior faculty. We are so grateful for your input and all of this fruitful discussion about how we can stay in the game, how we can all help support each other and effectively navigate these early stages of academia. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.